a battle with cancer. He's been fighting for his life. And so the grace of the Lord is upon him, tremendous grace upon him. He shares the grace with us, what God has been doing with him during this particular time. And specifically, he has got a story about a testimony concerning Padre Pio. But I'll let him tell his story right now. So, Deacon Jim, thank you for coming.
Sure.
Welcome.
Thank you. Now it's past my bedtime, though. 7:30. I'm over at Avondale now. We go to bed early over there, right? Yeah. Thank you for inviting me here tonight. It's an honor to be here and share, really, it's God's story, not mine. So just mini bio, I'm a cradle Catholic from Cleveland, Ohio. Sorry. Went to 16 years of Catholic school. Met Marcy at the University of Dayton. She's from Philly, so that's where we met. We made the Cursillo in Cleveland when we were 25, so we were pretty young. That was the turning point, I think, in our lives, my life, in terms of a relationship with God. Because up to that time, it was grown up in the 50s, and all that. Cursillo really changed that with, the laity, and grouping and, finding God in daily life. So big change there in our life. In 78, I obtained a transfer to Baltimore. Marcy's family, she's 1 of 9, so we decided to come out this way. So we had 4 kids. We liked St. Margaret's because it had a school, because we had settled in Hartford. So then there we are at St. Margaret's. That very month we moved. It was really interesting. The first Ultrea of Cursillo, which is the monthly meeting, happened at St. Mark's. And we happened to be there for the first one. So it was God working in our lives at that point. I became very involved, Marcy, in the Cursillo. I ended up as the lay director of the entire Baltimore area for a number of years. And Marcy taught in preschool for 15 years at St. Margaret's. And in '89, through the grace of God, was able to start my own business up here and be more available to the kids, and Tim's standing back there, and I coached them in every living sport there was. It was great. We had a ball. I was under Father Callahan. I handled the finance chair for 15 years. Don't ever say yes. It's not 2 years. It was 15 years. So helped a lot with when we were building all these buildings and, financing them and that. So doing God's work, right? Doing God's work in the midst of a busy life, with 4 children. And then sometime in the late 1990s, I was one day thinking about the diaconate, and I'd never really thought about it before. We had deacons here. Gene Miller was one of the deacons, a couple of the other guys, Pat Goals. But I never really thought about doing it, but I just had that prompt, just that little prompt. Why don't you go look at it? I went home and I said that to Marsh. We had never talked about it. She said, I had that same prompt today, the very same day. So then you just inch along and you go look at it. And then in May of 2003, I was ordained. And, we then, for the last 20 years have done God's work through the diaconate and all that's involved, and I won't go through all that, but God calls us to do so much through the diaconate. So we continued God's work. That's my bio. Then I turned 70. Don't do it. With this group, I don't know. I think, whew, we might have went by that one. There's a few people here. So the only, you can't see it very well, but I have 5 stitches right here. They're still there from when I was 5 years old, right? I was carrying some Coke bottles, those little Coke bottles down the bed, and I dropped them, and I must have went and cut myself, and I went to the hospital, and I got the stitches. That's the only thing that's been wrong with me till I was 70 years old. Great shape, always ran the town runs, running, walking, playing with the kids, doing whatever. Then in October 19th of 22, I was driving, and I just couldn't see as well. I got to get my glasses updated. So I went and saw my eye doc, and he's like, your retina's detached. I said, okay. So he sent me over to Wilmer right here, by the mall. So I went over there, she drilled down in there, and she's like, that's a tumor behind your eye. They sent me downtown the very next day to Baltimore, and he said, it's uveal melanoma, a very rare tumor, cancer. And this doc was, he was pretty bold, and it was okay, I can handle it. He said, do you want your eye or do you want your life? So it's an easy answer, because you had to get it out because it would spread. You don't want the melanoma spreading. Unfortunately, it did. It had metastasized to the liver. So I have stage 4 liver cancer with no cure. We do therapies and treatments, and we try to slow it down. I mean, that's the only goal. People come up to me and go, oh, you're doing great. I said, we're extending, and we're all doing that, right? We're all extending our life in many ways, right? But this one's more, right up to you. Yeah. This doc also told me that 10 years ago, I would have had 3 to 6 months to live. But with the immunotherapies and some of the different things, it's extended. So I'm at 27 months right now. So I'm blessed, very blessed at the moment. Early on in this, I heard God say to me, you probably have all gotten this. He said, this is a gift to you. You know what I said? I said, can I give it back? Right? That's what he said. This is a gift to you. So what I've learned and what I've experienced is the gift of prayer has been overwhelming. I've never felt it this powerful in my life before. So as I go through these treatments, infusions, tests, you get extra strength to get through them, because you can't humanly get through some of these things. They're crazy. But that prayer just settles you down and gets you through them. You're not cured, but it moves you through these different things. So November of 7th of 22, this left eye was removed at Hopkins. My brother-in-law, Marcy's brother, he's a priest up in Allentown, and the Sisters of Charity work at his parish up there. And so he started this prayer novena, wherever it is. He put this little prayer out, novena to Blessed Pauline von Mallinckrodt, okay? And the whole point is she's a blessed, and those nuns are from Germany. And so we started this novena to them because she needs a miracle, So I always say in our peregrine group, pray to the blesseds. They all need a miracle. They still need one. So, he started that. So on the very day of that operation, when I was downtown at Hopkins, in Paderborn, Germany, this nun was on her knees at Blessed Pauline's grave, praying for me for intercession. Well, that blew me away. So things like that happen. And I felt such strength and peace before the operation, like angels lifting me up. There was so much prayer surrounding me, and they're about to cut my eye out. but I was at peace. A couple weeks later, I was doing the Monday novena here at St. Margaret's. I had a patch on the eye, had to wear one of those for a while. The school kids love the patch. I got every pirate joke in the world on the way out. Hey, Deacon Jim. So I'm at the novena, and there's a new sacristan there, Andreas, and he asked me, he said, and I don't know him, I never met him, he's brand new. He said, do you remember anything from the surgery? I said, no, not, later in recovery, but I said, well, no one's really ever asked me that question. Well, it turns out he was the nurse in the operating room looking over me that day, and I had never met him. He said when I woke up, and I don't remember any of this, he said, you just yelled in the middle of the room, thank God. And he said, you're the most peaceful person in the last 3 years that I've done these waking up. So God had an angel in that operating room with me. Yeah, I was trembling from the power of that prayer. When you're sick or ill, you get to spend more time with God, right? He has your attention at that point. You can't go running around doing the 40 things you want to do. When I was up at Jefferson for a year going through, and they were wonderful up there. They specialize in this area. You had to lay on your back for 6 hours, after the treatment. So you learn how to pray differently when you have 6 hours and you don't move, So I've been introduced to many saints and many blesseds over these past couple of years, and most of them need a miracle to become a saint. So you ask for intercession, constantly asking for myself and for others. Again, my brother-in-law, I was up at his place in Allentown, and one of his classmates came down who was staying with him, priest. He said, who needs a miracle? And I was like, so he throws a relic card at me, and it was Stanley Rother, first American-born martyr from Oklahoma. He died in Guatemala in 1981. And I never heard of him, never heard of the guy. So I found out more about him. I read his book, this is, The Shepherd Who Didn't Run. Absolutely get it. It's a tremendous story about this man. He's a farmer, barely got through the seminary. Had to come out to St. Mary's. They got him through the seminary up at the mount. So it was great, but just a wonderful story. So, so then I wanted to go up to the mount because they probably had some stuff up there, some relics or whatever. So Marcy and I, we trucked up there, and we wanted to find the relics. And I heard God saying, go to the seminary chapel. So we went over there. And one of the daughters of Charity we know pretty well. She met us over there. So we met at the seminary doors, and we went in. And right there was a bunch of Stanley Rother stuff, like his papers, things he had signed and all that. And then the admin person heard us out there, and so she gets the rector of the whole seminary. I'm like, we don't have to do that. But so he came out. Well, here he knew my brother-in-law, Pat, from Allentown. So that connection happened again. So he dragged me into the chapel, and over there on the left they had his relics, first class. So they had part of his bone and some of his blood. So he had this prayer, and he prayed over me there with the first class relics. So that was overwhelming. But again, that just all happened. Miracles just kept coming and coming and coming and coming. I'm not cured, though. Right? I'm not cured. A while ago, I was home. It was a Tuesday night, and I was having a down night. Cheep. You go down the hole, right? Easy to go down. And so I, flipped the tube on, and Chosen was on. You probably all know what Chosen is, the TV series. Tremendous. Series 3, Episode 8 was on, so I watched it. It was King David, and the psalmists are presenting him with Psalm 77 for his approval. It starts off really somber and distressing, and where are you, God? Why aren't you here? The person's yelling at God. And it's got the scene where Peter's walking on the water, and he sinks, And I love the scene. I use it for prayer all the time. And he's just like this, and the water's like here. Jesus is just pulling him out. And it's just a tremendous scene, and very emotional for me. I use it all the time. Then you get to the end of the episode, and the psalmists are reading to King David the end of it. Now it's more positive. Now God's showing up, and he's making things happen, so it's more positive. So God hears, and he comes to everybody's rescue. Very uplifting. I really needed that night, and it was tremendous. Got up the next morning, and I got my breviary to read, and there's different psalms and prayers in there each day. And what psalm was in there that morning? Psalm 77. That's what was sitting there waiting for me. The discouragement was gone. Again, another miracle. There have been so many in the last 27 months, and all these miracles remind me that Jesus is right next to us when we are suffering, but we may not notice him at all. But when we're sick, when we're ill, he has our attention. One of the saints I pray to a lot is Padre Pio. Canonized in 2002, died in 1968, has the 5 wounds, the stigmata, for 50 years. 50 years. And again, I knew nothing about him either. Yeah, I heard his name maybe. So EWTN had the movie on, about him. So I watched it the one night. So that was neat. I said, wow, this guy's something else. So last year I was up at Jefferson again, one of those wonderful treatments, 6 hours on my back in pain. And as I was laying there, I looked up, and the light fixture up in the ceiling, as I stared up, was Padre Pio's face looking down on me. And I go, there's Padre Pio, and Marcy was standing right there, and she saw it. One of my sons was there, not him, so I won't pick on one of the other sons. I have 3 sons. He was in the back, and he couldn't see the face. It lasted, 8 seconds, and the pain was reduced, and I was at great peace at that point. So I wanted to get to know more about Padre Pio then, obviously. So in the beginning of that year, last year, we did a pilgrimage up to Bartow, Pennsylvania. There's a center up there for Padre Pio. It's tremendous. It's 2 hours. So we journeyed there and hoping to, again to see his relics, his glove, one of his gloves, because the nuns they washed them and then put them back, and then they kept them, obviously, so they became relics. We arrived up there, and my brother-in-law, again, from Allentown, met us there, and we went to the worship center, but couldn't find the relics. Went to the museum, couldn't find them. Bumped into this guy named Dave, the typical, guy at the museum, right? He was so into it. He was looking for anybody. We're like, oh, come on, let me show you everything. It was great. I loved it. Everyone else went and sat down. I was like, no, it was great. But he directed us back to the worship center. So we went back there. So my brother-in-law, he found the sacristan back there. He explained we're up there, for a cancer blessing. She immediately brought it out. It's in a frame, and it's got the glove in there. So she handed it to my brother-in-law. I knelt down. He blessed me with it. I blessed him. We blessed Marcy. It was really emotional. It was just beautiful. We thanked the sacristan. I asked her name, and of course it's Angela. What else would it be? Angels. They're everywhere. Mother's Day last May, a few of us went out for dinner, and right next to this, little restaurant we're at was a Goodwill store. My granddaughter says, "Can we go shopping?" What else do you do on Mother's Day, right? Go to Goodwill and shop. So we all split up and we just kind of walk, you mosey around, just looking. And my son, not him, the one that was in their room that day who did not see Padre Pio, goes, "Dad, look what I found in the back of the store." And that's the picture I saw. That's the image I saw. And there's a glove, on his hand. You can't see it, but it was $4. I bought it. $4. Yeah. So there it was, back of a Goodwill store. Exact same picture. So we pray to Padre Pio often, often, all the time. When we were in Bartow, Dave again suggested a book. Now we're getting serious. Here it is, 500 pages, small print. I am almost done. I am like right there, but this guy writes a very real story. I mean, it's not, because there's so much, Padre, there are all these things that are said about him, right? Some are very factual and can be proven. Some may have happened, but but this guy, he's all about proof. It's amazing. So get it, from that bookstore. But what I realized when you read the book is Padre Pio received his strength from the Eucharist. That's where his strength came from, And he would always say, "I didn't cure anybody, God did." It's not me. It said his masses would go 1.5 to 2 hours, so he wouldn't last at St. Margaret's. Some were actually 4 hours. But they would say when he did the consecration, he was in pain, because he had the stigmata, and his hands, but he was in pain holding up the Eucharist, like he was feeling Christ's pain. That's how much, God gave to this Padre Pio. He was becoming like Jesus. And many people, when he was alive were healed. Many, people flocked there, in hundreds and thousands. And then it continues. It continues today. He's very active right now. My son he ended up, then he found that, he had to buy that for me, so there you go. So there we go. Pray, hope, and don't worry. So what's the so what? A lot of stories. Another person I follow is Francis Sealos, Blessed Francis Sealos. Came through Baltimore, right? Redemptorist, during the Civil War. He did seminary work, and he had the North and South guys in the seminary. So he had to, somehow handle that. But here's, this is one of his novena books, but I read it every day. And what he says in here, in this paragraph, for the suffering and trouble of every kind, he always had a word of helpful and consoling wisdom. He gave them the conviction that in every affliction and suffering, divine providence has the very definite purpose of tearing people away from the world and of making them holy. Think about that. Tearing people away from the world and making them holy. Because they're sick, right? Some other things that have happened, things that happened because of this, just a couple items. one of my son's friends, he grew up Catholic, you know, went to Catholic schools. And I remember he came up to me at one point and he says, you know, he's in his 40s. He goes, I don't believe in prayer. I don't believe in God. I don't believe in any of that stuff. But for you, Mr. Jim, I'm going to pray to God. Well, what's that, right? I didn't do anything. I'm sick. I did nothing. St. Peregrine Group has started because of this, and you know, we get 15 to 20 people a month. We've probably had 40 people come through facing cancer or other diseases. So we do this book, Facing Cancer with Mary. Tremendous book. A nun wrote it, going through her journey. So if you are or someone you love, get the book. It's tremendous. Or come to the meeting. But that happened. You know, that came out of this. You know, now I'm kind of aware of maybe 100 or more people in our parish that, you know, are battling cancer, and there's more, I'm sure. So, went on a golf outing last summer. You know, about 20 of us go every year, and you know, these are young guys, you know, and they all prayed with me. They all prayed with me. You know, it's unbelievable. Hundreds and thousands of prayers. Hundreds and thousands from my family, this parish, orders of nuns, you know, in Europe and, you know, here, high school, college friends, texts, cards, holy water from Lourdes and Knock, dirt from out west, holy dirt that's been given to me. Father Dan, a couple months ago, you know, we're doing the school mass, and he had the elementary kids, 350 of them pray over me. Talk about humbling. So there's been hundreds and hundreds also of encounters in these last 27 months with different people and situations. And the point I want to make, it's the only point I can make, it's all because I'm sick. Right? I didn't do anything. I was a deacon for 20 years, doing this. Like you were talking about, the opportunity comes. No, I didn't. It was nothing. I'm sick. And God took that. So he takes sickness, he takes illness, and what he does is he draws people. He draws people. He draws people to him. So God takes suffering and he brings his people back to him. And we assist him by allowing him to work through our weakness and illness. It's terribly humbling. So we put ourselves in God's hands and we surrender. We surrender. We just surrender and let him, you know, let him do his work. Yeah. Thank you.